What is it about food that is satisfying some type of an emotional trigger?
You have to just understand the basics of what are carbohydrates, protein, and fats, minerals, micronutrients, phytonutrients, zoonutrients.
It's so difficult to get them to make the smallest freaking change.
Our ancestors wouldn't be able to survive a day in this world. They would get hit by a car probably instantly.
Is there anything in supplements, like label-wise, that you want to stay away from?
One of the only rules that I found to be consistent and applicable to almost everyone is that you want to base your nutrition around protein.
And it's kind of like we jump in a time machine, you go back in time, and we find the 18-year-old version of you. You only have 20 seconds to talk to yourself, the younger version of you. What would you tell them? Okay, everyone, listen, about 15 years ago, I walked into a supplement store here in the Newport Beach area, beautiful store and an amazing area. And of course, I'm firing questions off. I'm trying to get on top of my fitness game. I was sort of like on one to get ripped back in shape. And I come across this young dude who's like, yo, bro, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to take. Here's what ingredients you pay attention to. Here's what ingredients you don't need. This is fluff. This is not. Do this. And I promise you things will work out. The dude ended up knowing exactly what he was talking about. We became friends. We see each other once in a while. He's a great dude, a family man now. But now 15 years later, he's the founder of High Performance Nutrition, one of the leading supplement companies in the industry, and also a little bit on the upper echelon when it comes to quality and honesty. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, Sean Torbati.
Thanks for having me on, Joe.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Yes, sir.
See you.
15 years is a long time.
It's not that long, bro.
It's a long time.
It's not that long.
They say that if you know someone for 7 years and you like kind of maintain contact with them, that you're likely to know them for the majority of your life afterwards. Like, it's a good indicator that you're gonna know them forever. And so when you said, hey, you wanna come on? I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, I always enjoy being around you, talking with you, picking up things from you, just as you have from me. And I think it's a great connection that I value.
Dude, I've secretly picked up a lot from you that you don't know that I brag about when you're not around.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, dude, how you know all this? I'm like, I'm just smart, bro.
Yeah.
Right. But obviously from others too.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not like we may go 2 years without even talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But you kind of keep tabs on people that you admire.
Yeah.
And you see them making moves in their life, especially since there's a lot of bad examples out there. I haven't always been a great example myself. Like, it's sort of a seasonal thing. And now it's like I'm rebuilding that circle of trust. And for those of you listening in, like, it's so true. Like, even though you may not have people in your everyday life, you're still paying attention to what others are doing. I actually call it respect factor, or your respect score. It's like everybody's sort of secretly keeping tabs on you. And some of the stuff that I've seen you guys do, both in business, in your personal life, your business partners, some of the things that you've innovated over the past decade with some new research really caught my attention. And guys, before we started recording, I was talking to Sean about how many contradicting views there are out there on nutrition, on the vegan diets, on carnivore, on paleo. What is it called? Paleo?
Yeah, paleo.
Right? Paleo. All these different things and supplements. And it's like information overload. And it's like you can literally have two 20-year experts talking with conviction, completely contradicting each other.
Sure.
Right? And so you're listening to this, and it's almost like, I don't know what's the right answer. Like, do you look for what information is more consistent?
Yeah.
Are people really choosing what information they like better? I mean, you've been exploring these things, and I know you've tried some modified versions of all these things in your own life, right?
I have. I sure have.
If I'm like online and like listening to people like you or others, how do I know what to listen for?
I think the most important thing anyone can do before you take in the fully formed opinion of any expert is to understand the basics. You have to know what you're dealing with at the foundational level before we can even get into like me telling you how I put all the pieces together. Right? If I show you a puzzle and it's already constructed, it looks great. It's like, that's why you said that you can have two different experts sharing their opinion. It's a fully formed puzzle at that point, and you don't understand the pieces. You just see the picture that they're painting and it looks great. But if you don't have a elementary understanding of the subject at hand, you can't really interpret what parts of that are going to apply to you or not.
Meaning what subject?
Nutrition in this case, right? If we're focusing on nutrition, then it's like, with all these different types of diets, you have to just understand the basics of what are carbohydrates, protein, and fats, minerals, micronutrients, phytonutrients, zoonutrients. If you don't know what these things are,
You're blowing us away, right?
you can't have that conversation.
Right.
And why I'm saying that is because all of these experts, whether they're legitimate or illegitimate so-called experts, they all have an opinion that's been formed based on their education plus their experience, right? And then we're biased towards our experience.
Right.
And then we can use our education to validate our experience. A lot of times, and you know this from sales, like again, I'm going to tell you, I've learned a lot of things by watching and consuming things that you've done, even without telling you to. And so a lot of times in sales, people will find a way to validate the decision they wanted to make anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's not that it wasn't logical.
Like I like eating meat. So
yeah.
I'm going to believe more so in the carnivore.
Right. So I'm going to find things that, or like I lost weight the best when I ate meat only. Right. And so it's like, okay, now I need to figure out ways to validate that that's true and everything else is false.
So that's what I'm getting at. Because this is the conversation that starts out as a basic question, and then it gets complicated by somebody who's super educated on it.
Yeah.
Simply put, what is this foundation that you're talking about?
The foundation is an understanding of those components of what nutrition is. Like when you're talking about nutrition in any diet, it's built on what the diet is made of. And all diets are going to be made of some combination of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. They have to be, right? We can't skip that part. And so if you don't understand what those things are and how they work in your body, then you can't have the high level conversation of how to put them together.
So is it safe to assume that any one of these diets can work well?
Any one of these diets can work. That's the most important part. Yeah, if, they can't not have those components. They're going to have some level.
You don't subscribe to this like we've always been meat eaters or we've always been plant eaters or our teeth are designed for this type of diet, our immune system, our digest. You're like, you can make it work with just about anything.
Yeah, I try not to get too like anthropological about it. Like it doesn't really matter what we used to do. Like what matters is what's going on. We didn't used to be in high-rise buildings like this, filming ourselves on some kind of device, transmitting information via Wi-Fi. There's so many things that we didn't used to do that we do now.
Downstairs hunting for squirrels.
Yeah. So like I don't subscribe to those notions of limitations of the past. I'm thinking what's going on right now? Yeah. What can we do to optimize ourselves right now? We have so many conveniences that we never had before. Our ancestors wouldn't be able to survive a day in this world. They would get hit by a car probably instantly.
What would you advise for like the like just general health longevity plan? Are you saying modify, guys? Are you saying like find what works for you?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to like change it or transition it. Don't be a vegan. Don't be a carnivore. Like experiment. Just find what works for you. Like
there's very few like set in stone rules that I have and want to like prescribe to people. But I will say just as a precursor to saying anything at all, that I have been studying nutrition for almost 20 years now. It's my number one passion in life. It's the thing I love the most. I decided not to go down the route of formal dietetics because I realized by seeing my mom who worked in that field and in the hospital that I wasn't going to have my greatest impact with people who already were sick. I was going to have a better opportunity to help people who were interested, like you, people who wanted to take charge of their health and then utilizing the ability to impact them. And then how can they impact someone else? I thought that would be a better route for me to go down. So I figured through college and then after college that I was going to work in the nutrition field in that way, not in the hospital to care for people who weren't well already, but for people who wanted to optimize themselves. So with that said, one of the only rules that I found to be consistent and applicable to almost everyone is that you want to base your nutrition around protein. Like protein should be the macronutrient that you make sure you address first and foremost and get enough of each and every day.
I've heard you mention that before.
If you do that, then you can have more or less carbs, more or less fat, and different sources of food.
And does that also help with like the insulin?
It does, stability? Yeah. It's the most.
A lot of you talk about insulin.
Yeah,
you got to regulate your insulin.
Protein's the most effective nutrient in my opinion because if you consume enough of it, and let's just say you overconsume it, what will then happen is your body will break it down into the glycogen that it needs. So it can convert protein into carbohydrate, essentially. Like there's a magic mechanism to put it very simply, that we can do that through.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you overconsume protein and undereat carbs, you'll still be all right.
I think Gary Beckham talks about that sometimes.
Most likely,
He's
because
like, most protein does, or a lot of protein does break down into a glycogen format, basically, right?
Yeah. So you need to have glycogen to run your body. So if you don't consume it, your body will make it from protein that it breaks down and forms into glycogen for you. So you can consume protein and be pretty well covered. The other thing is that it creates the best ability to maintain lean muscle mass, to control your insulin levels, to give you steady energy. It's just a great macronutrient to base your diet around. Now, that does not mean that it has to be meat.
What do you eat for protein?
It doesn't have to be meat. It can be an animal protein source, eggs, fish, chicken, steak, and etc. It can come from plant sources too, beans, legumes, nuts, things like that. And then I actually only make, in our businesses, we only make plant-based protein powders because
you've got a lot. See, this is the part where I feel it's contradicting.
Right.
Because you have, like you said, 20 years. I'm seeing like the Dr. Gundrys of the world, 40 years, 50-year experts saying, don't do these nuts, don't do legumes. They have lectins in their skin, and this can cause gut problems and health problems down the road, and you know what I mean, so on and so forth. So this is that part where, like, you know, I want to drill down and challenge each of us on this.
Yeah.
Because the way let me give you my perspective. My perspective is, if you feel that you can eat things and you don't get bloated, you're not uncomfortable, it doesn't affect your sleep, your energy levels are good, you're not breaking out, you're not, you know, these types of things, then just go with it, is the way I'm taking it. Because I got to the point, and I know you guys out there know, I'm canceling so many different foods in my life. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, what, I'm left with like 5 foods now, you know, other than the general health ones and so forth. But you're like, you can eat nuts, you can eat beans, you can eat this, you can eat that. And I feel like that part is like contradicting. So are we right in our thinking where it's like modified to what your system allows?
Yes. I think most of this is based on 2 things. Either someone is overweight, maybe by a little bit, maybe by a lot, and they want to lose weight, or they're not well and they are chronically sick. They have some type of issue that's ongoing that they can't quite figure out. If either of those 2 things is the issue, that's when you want to really consider the individual sources of food that you're consuming. If you're the latter group, sorry, if you're at a healthy body weight, but you're constantly ill and have issues that you can't seem to pinpoint, and you can't understand, you feel like you're not well, you can then dive into blood work and finding ways to quantify that, as well as looking at dietary interventions. But if you're overweight and you're feeling like I can't lose weight or something is wrong with me, by and large, I've seen these problems that people who are overweight have be solved by not being overweight anymore. Like, the first thing to do is to take off that backpack of the excess body weight and watch your body normalize itself.
What do you think about all these drugs like the Ozempics and all this other stuff that's been coming out?
If someone is obese, if they are having a body fat percentage over 40 or 35 to 40%,
it's a threat.
Yeah, if it's a big problem and they can't, and they, you know, have already like at least given it a good go, and they just aren't able to put the puzzle together correctly to lose the weight, I'm all for it, to be honest with you. And the reason is because we need to get that weight off of them right away. And if by simply reducing the motility of food through their body and slowing down the digestive process enough that they don't eat as often, and then they can pair that with, by the way, only should be paired with the responsible oversight of a physician and a diet and exercise program.
Have you noticed that a lot
If they
of
can do
people
all that, if they can do all that, then I'm a fan.
So 2 things. You're triggering me to like ask better questions. Do you think that, have you noticed that there are a significant amount of people who are unfortunately dealing with a weight problem that actually don't eat a lot?
No. There's a significant, obviously it's the biggest problem in our country, actually, in the United States and maybe worldwide in developed countries, is people being overweight. Our bodies and minds are wired to consume. And if that's not figured out, whether it's a cultural issue or a personal issue, if that's not figured out how to balance that, we will rapidly gain weight.
Why does it seem like it's not necessarily tied to how much people eat?
It is tied to how much people eat. It's tied to how much they eat. They are, as a matter of fact, consuming more food. They just do it in different ways. And usually those ways are even worse for them. because people who are obese or significantly overweight and can't lose weight, most likely, unless they have a serious medical condition, which most people don't have, I'm going to say tens of thousands of people that I've encountered directly one-on-one, as in like I know them and I've met them. It's well over 1,000 individual clients that I've had. Online, tens of thousands. People with serious medical issues, that was the intervention that was needed, was like doctor's care and some type of treatment. Something was seriously wrong with them.
Right.
It numbers it like I can count it on one hand.
Okay.
Most people, lifestyle wise, just haven't figured it out yet. And they have habits and routines that have been built and ingrained that are hard for them to undo. And one of them is binge eating. And binge eating isn't as ugly as it sounds. You imagine someone like ordering, a smorgasbord of food and like devouring it all and like with food all over their body and face.
I want to like,
Yeah,
just to be transparent, I do that sometimes.
sure. And that's the thing.
I'll tell you that sometimes.
So, and you can imagine how you do that. And so if you do it, you're a normal person.
Right.
Like imagine what someone who's overweight and depressed might do.
Right.
And so what happens is people who are overweight and want to lose weight, what do you think that you should do? Eat less. So what they do is they eat less, but they eat too much less.
What is it about food that is satisfying some type of an emotional trigger?
Well, here's the thing, Joe. This is really important to say. And I actually made a video about this recently. It hasn't come out yet with Mike. We are operating in a world right now that is set up for us to fail. And we are living in a world and society that is filled with what I call hyper palatable foods. Hyper palatable foods are those that contain a combination of sugar and fat, both in large amounts, with minimized protein or sometimes with protein too. But if they have a high amount of both fat and carbohydrates, they're hyper palatable.
Do you think our food is starting to become big industry driven, like literally trying to destroy us? Or do you think it's just more profitable?
It's profit. Yeah, it's profit. It's not about destroying us, because why would you want to destroy your customers?
Right, why would you want to destroy your customers?
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You just want them to buy more of it. And you want it to cost you less to make.
Right.
So the more you can engineer the ingredients synthetically,
and the more you can get people addicted to that food.
Yeah, they're going to buy more of it, and it costs you less to make it.
You don't sit down, Sean, sometimes and grab that bag of chips, bro, and just get down?
I have, yeah. And the thing is that there's no need to be...
Just so you know, we do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like all the time, but there's a little bit more balance.
There's a balance. And so if you want to enjoy that, the thing is like, I do not include it in my life.
Right.
It's not part of my daily diet.
Sure.
But if I encounter it and I feel like having some, I'm going to. But other times I can literally remember right now, I saw some Flamin' Hot Cheetos, which I used to like in the past when I was in Canada last weekend. And there was a bowl of them, and I was just like, they look too neon to me. All of a sudden, I was like,
really?
They look too like bright, because I was in a park, all these bright colors, and these things were standing out like some kind of like foreign object from another world. And I was like, I don't even want to eat that right now. I don't know why, but other times I want them. So
you know what I've been talking about lately with a lot of the homies is like when they go buy these chips and it has some type of like health caption on the front, right? And they're like, this is healthy, right? And they flip it over and I'm like, bro, it's very simple. Read the little paragraph underneath the nutrition. Tell me what's in it. And you see all the vegetable oils.
Yeah.
Okay, which is like, I guess, in like 85% of our food now.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get back to what I think you're telling us needs to become a normal part of life. Instead of becoming a nutritional or health expert, there's probably a couple things that we need to normalize as part of our life. But I want to tap into getting back to the oils. Listen, I come from a Middle Eastern family. Okay. My mom cooked with canola oil, mazola oil, and all that stuff that we use in our food all the time. And relatively speaking, we're still generally, thank God, healthy people, right? But why are these vegetable oils being harped on so much right now?
Let's just say that crops that are grown with genetic modification are an easy target to like try and hone in what the problem is. And whether it's Gundry with this plant paradox or people with seed oils, they have an angle. There's an angle, and then you start going hard on the angle, and you continue to do so until you get attention for it. And then usually there's something attached to that too, whether it's a book or a product or et cetera. I don't think that's really the problem. I still think that it's like how those things are used in combination with other ingredients. And then how there's a lack of understanding of how much portion size you should have of things. Because you could there's not a lot of great data on this, but you could have seed oils every single day as part of your diet, and if you were calorie balanced appropriately, I doubt you would have any major difference between that and another oil.
See, this is blowing my mind. Do you know how much attention is being given right now? Like, I've cut them out.
Yeah,
Not
we're
entirely, but
looking
like,
for a culprit, Joe. Everyone's looking for a culprit about why they can't get there. Just like in the business world,
could it be a
everyone's
part of a new fad or something that they're going to push something else.
no. That is the angle, is that the seed oils are causing this disruption in our DNA and this
Testosterone.
improper replication of our
Okay.
DNA. Yeah, decreasing our
Right.
testosterone, making all these issues, and whether or not they are optimal as compared to like an olive oil or something like that isn't really the point that I think people should emphasize on. I think it still will go back to being a subcategory underneath the portion of these things that you consume on a daily basis. Like the dose will make the poison with these things.
Right. Right.
And so by the same virtue, having like too much olive oil is probably not a good thing either.
Yeah.
But people aren't doing that
Right.
because olive oil is not incorporated into their foods.
And
So-
olive oil is like highlighted as one of the healthier ones,
Sure.
as long as you don't cook with it a lot. Because I guess
Right.
when you cook,
As
with
long as you don't burn it, yeah.
it becomes a carcinogen
Yeah.
at some level, right?
By burning it, because it has a lower smoke point
Okay.
than other oils.
So you can still cook it with just lower temperature.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it in at the end or something like that.
Not even at the end, just at a low. It shouldn't be like you wouldn't use it to sear with.
I
for
mean,
example.
I'm up in the morning sometimes, like having a half a shot of olive oil in the morning. Is
Yeah.
that something that makes sense?
It doesn't not make sense. Like it's all about the total serving for the day. I don't think timing with fat is all that important for people, unless if someone is like, this is when it comes back, Joe, where I don't want to give us the out to say you don't need to understand carbohydrates, protein, and fat.
Right.
Because if someone doesn't understand that, I don't even want to. Don't talk to me about seed oils if you don't
Right.
know what carbs, fat, and
Get the
protein
basics
do.
down first.
Yeah, if you don't know about vitamins and minerals and how, like what we need and what they each do, let's not talk about seed oils yet.
Okay.
If you don't know how many calories is your basal metabolic rate, like even if that's a guesstimate,
The only reason I
number,
bring it up is because it's super hard to avoid them.
which ones?
Seed oils.
That's even more of a reason to not focus on it. Like if it's super hard to avoid something,
Yeah.
don't focus on that thing. Focus on the things that you need to make decisions around, which is
The
like
big
which
areas
foods.
of correction.
Yeah, which foods you're going to get so much bang for your buck by understanding how many calories you should consume on a daily basis. That will far and away override the effects of eliminating seed oils.
Okay. So earlier we were talking about, I know, you flow and I'm finally at the level where I can understand some of the complexity of the things you're talking about. But you mentioned do your blood work, figure out where you're at. That's the part where I think should become a normal part of living now.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
talking about from the age of like 20. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And is there a truth, like, should we be going out there and doing these mail order blood tests or things to find out what our sensitivities are in our diets or things we should include or stay away from?
No. So
Wow.
what I think that we should do is do our blood work in terms of a normal full panel, which can't be done via mail currently. Actually, the person who was trying to like claim that they could do like a very small blood draw
Yeah.
and get a very large outcome is now in jail
It's being pushed very hard by multiple companies.
to get certain small pieces of data.
Okay.
Or-
Like supplementation data.
Yeah, or like certain sensitivity data.
Okay.
But like a full blood panel. This is again this is akin to focusing on seed oil when you don't know how many calories, carbs, protein, and fat you're consuming. If you don't know your cholesterol and your triglycerides and these other like serum markers for calcium in your body, you're focusing on the sensitivities you have to food, you're missing the bigger picture. You're tripping what I call tripping over dollars to pick up dimes.
Okay.
Like you're missing a big thing that you could be doing. So I think at least twice a year, once if you can't afford to do it twice a year,
Got it.
we should do a full panel blood test. That's where you got to go to the lab
Right.
and they need to draw like 5-6 vials of blood from
Like
you.
I do it about 2, sometimes 3 times a year.
Yeah, two
But
is
I'm also
perfect.
in my like mid 40s.
Yeah, 2 times is perfect, I think, for everyone. Because even blood work is a snapshot in time of where you are at that time. It's the best indicator of what's going on inside of you. And we all know how much money is in our bank account, roughly. And if you don't, you should, right?
Sure.
We all know how much money we have in our savings.
Right.
We know a lot of these things. Some people know all the stats.
We
of
only
their,
hold ourselves accountable to like what we can see.
Yeah.
on the surface. Basically.
People focus on stats of things that aren't even about them. In terms of sports and et cetera, they know like the scoring average, but they don't know their own blood work.
Brands, clothing, cars, sports.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A guy will know the 0 to 60 time of the newest model of X, Y, and Z car, but won't know his cholesterol.
Right.
And so it's like, you need to do this blood work. And these are the major markers that are going to be predictive of your health. And so by knowing them, you can start to then understand them and see if anything's out of whack. The easiest thing that you can do is see if you're outside of the established ranges of normal measurements, right? But here's why blood work is so important. When you have your blood work over a history of time, you can see changes occurring, or a medical professional can see changes occurring that normally wouldn't raise any flags. And actually through the store, luckily the store where we met, I was able to meet many like extremely wealthy individuals, and some of them were able to do this blood work. They would be doing it like 4 times a year even. And some people,
you were actually coaching some of these guys at the time.
At the time, and even still now, only for a very few number of people. It's not for money; it's actually just for passion at this point. I would be monitoring their blood work, and they'd be getting quarterly or semi-annual blood work. We saw an individual, I won't name because I don't have their consent, but we saw someone have cancer in their body through their blood work. And we didn't know that's what we were seeing, but it prompted further investigation that led to them discovering that they had prostate cancer, and they were able to like alleviate it like with minimal intervention, just because they saw it coming so far ahead of time. Because all of a sudden markers were moving that didn't make sense, and they were still in normal range. That's what I'm getting at. If you don't do your blood work ever, or you don't have a relationship with your physician, or you're not understanding these things, if you have someone who's on the very, very low end of normal and the very, very high end of normal, you're going to get treated as normal. But if you were in 1 year on the low end of normal, and then within another year or so on the high end of normal, something's going on. Something's changed, and it might prompt some further investigation.
Is it something that, like, even now, because the world is so dynamic and we have so many different foods and stuff that we consume now, processed stuff, yada, yada, do you think it's important for people to start doing this in their 20s or no?
Yes. Because for most people, the 20s is the picture of best health for you. And if it's not, then at least you have a frame of reference to work towards. So I think, yes, starting in your 20s, you should be doing your blood work at least once a year. Like I said, that's a minimum, is once a year.
Sure.
I would prefer twice a year.
How much should somebody be paying for that?
If it's not through insurance, you can expect to pay something around $500 to do a full panel blood test.
So it's significant.
Yeah, it's significant. That's why I'm saying, like, but it is a worthwhile investment. If someone's telling me they can't afford that, I better not see you, out at the bar spending $100 on a Saturday, because that means you can't afford it.
Cases of beer every weekend.
And it's a matter of priority. Like when we're in our 20s, we don't tend to want to prioritize our health and wellness.
I didn't do hardly any blood tests in my 20s.
And so,
but I was fortunate that I got into the fitness, nutrition style living at like 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and here's why it is important to do the blood work. Sometimes these mutations occur and these like genetic predispositions show themselves regardless of our lifestyle and our best efforts.
Right.
And there's too many evidences now, with social media being so prevalent, of people who were apparently healthy and had something really tragic happen to them. And you wonder, like, could they have been saved by better monitoring and more advanced information? Because they put all the effort into their lifestyle and not enough effort, or any effort, into the measurement of the outcome.
Right. So I noticed that there's a lot of people that say it's genetic, it's in my family.
As far as their weight.
My father had this, my grandfather had, Alzheimer's, or my mother's side of the family has diabetes. Is that like, okay, there's absolutely some truth there, but is it kind of like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that you're automatically predispositioned for that?
Well, I think we should understand, when it comes to those conditions you're mentioning, everything but obesity, and even let's say obesity, you can have a predisposition to something, but then your lifestyle and your choices can have the most dramatic impact on how that is expressed.
Got it.
And if that possibility is elevated or decreased.
Because I feel like people almost use it as like an excuse. It's just in my family.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, but you kind of eat like shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing of all that we inherit is culture. We inherit culture and lifestyle and behaviors from our family and from those around us. And so that has a greater impact than the DNA even.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see you, come full circle on this stuff. And like, it seems like almost, to me, it feels like every minute you're updating your knowledge on something, almost like just a perpetual research.
I just finished a 3-month program with Harvard, executive nutrition program.
Wow.
And that's like representing the latest in nutritional research and advancement. And here's what's really cool. It's actually now going more towards the understanding of how our lives and nutrition integrate together, and like the societal factors of nutrition and how that plays in so deeply, because we don't get to live our lives in a vacuum. You don't live in this space alone, right? I don't live in a certain space alone. So it's not like we can be like, okay, this is how I'm going to eat and that's it. That's not really what happens.
So what exactly did you guys cover in that? Like
we're talking about how different groups of people and different families have to integrate together, and your lifestyle as a whole has to be reflective of the nutrition that you choose to move forward with. So like, for example, if you say, okay, I am now going to be carnivore only, and like you live in an area where you don't have access to high quality affordable meat and you don't have money for it, like that's not a good choice for you.
Got it.
So it's like, or if your wife is a vegan or a vegetarian, like,
right.
Or if your kids don't want to have that, they don't like meat for some reason, they're disgusted by it. A lot of kids go through phases where they don't want to eat meat. And so like if that happens, then you're like now having a lifestyle choice that you've made that isn't going to work so well because there's a lot of friction.
You want to know why I'm laughing?
Why?
Because when we grew up, parents didn't give a shit what we wanted to eat and what we didn't want to eat.
That's right.
It was like, here's what's on the table, like sit down and eat.
Kids have a lot more information now about what other kids are doing and like what the other options may be.
Right.
And so people are getting more and more spoiled. Like we're in the soft times right now.
Like sometimes I feel like, obviously whatever an adult chooses to do with their life is fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see a kid be like, "Oh, I'm vegan," and I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But then you might be right. Like he might genuinely prefer eating vegan.
Yeah.
I just feel like some of these things are a little bit more faddish than they are truth.
Yeah.
And I'm like constantly trying to uncover it because look, even in my personal life, I have friends, loved ones, my best friends sometimes, like we joke about the stuff they eat or the stuff I eat. But I'm getting at a point in my life where like I'm very sincere. Like, dude, you need to like cut back on this or kind of lean into this way of eating and whatnot. You don't realize that you're very easily influenced by the food and nutrition world and labels. And you don't really understand, like you said, just the basic fundamentals.
That's right.
Even little things like waking up right away and having coffee, or I'm not understand the importance of like having a little bit of water and maybe some salt. People immediately going to Tylenol every time they have a headache, or Advil every time their knee hurts or their ankle hurts. And I'm like, how about a glass of water with some salt in it?
Yeah.
And they're like, what? That's not going to work. They're so fixated on, like you mentioned, how they've been programmed. And I find that even with loved ones, it's so difficult to get them to make the smallest freaking change.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Do you have that in your friendship circle and your family? Like, what's the right way to do that?
Yeah, actually, my own dad's a good example. Someone who he's always been at a normal body weight, so it's a little bit tougher with him because he's not overweight. So it's not like, hey,
He's
Dad,
like, I'm healthy.
you have to. Yeah, he's like, I'm fine. Like it's like, what do you want from me? Like so him putting any level of thought into what he consumes, how much he consumes, is he doing enough activity? It's like it's tough because he's like, what do you want from me? Like I raised you, like you
get off my back.
Get off my back. I'm good. Everything's fine. But then things creep up. He starts having like ongoing shoulder issues because he's not active enough, because he doesn't use that muscles to generate it. And then something occurs where he wants to do something and then he gets hurt.
Sure.
Or,
so how do you communicate with him about these things?
It's a very, even look, I'm a subject matter expert, roughly speaking. It's like what I do for a living. And it's like, you have to give the information when it's needed and requested, and not by forcing it. So that's the other big thing that we covered in this Harvard course, was how to successfully integrate the information that you have with any subject. And the point is that they have to want it. If they don't want the information, it's impossible to give it to them.
Got it.
They'll find any which way to discredit the information.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of ways where you can say, no, this is the best thing. They'll do it one time, didn't work out great for them. Like their whole life didn't change because they skipped a bag of chips one time.
I find it so interesting that like titles of strangers have more impact than loved ones sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, like I can remember like saying things to myself, to my family, to my friends. Like 15 years later, like 2 doctors will mention that. And they'll be like, oh, and then they'll take it seriously.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, bruh, I've been talking about this for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like, do you understand that? Like, and I've always found it challenging. And then when it comes to supplements too, like people I seem to ask me like, what do you take? Or what do you lean on? Or what's your daily routine when it comes to supplements? And I want to pick your brain on that because one of the problems, it's a good problem. And it's kind of like a blessing in disguise. But one of the problems I have is I keep adding to my supplement stack. Keep adding. I got stuff on the counter, stuff in the cabinet, stuff in the bathroom.
Right.
It's like everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm kind of like at a point now where like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Chill out.
Yeah.
What are the core things that I need in the morning? What are the core things that I need in the evening? And how can I make this so it's not a $700 expense every month?
Yeah.
You know, I would love, especially for a young person or an individual who's raising a family and has a lot of responsibilities, or like my family was, they don't have an extra $300 a month to spend on
even 200,
right?
Yeah, even 200, even 100.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So, what do we do? What should we take? Like, what are the basic 4 or 5 things that we need?
So, giving that exact list is a bit like me saying what diet is the best. And that's important for me to say, even as someone who makes my living predominantly from designing, formulating, researching, testing. I will. And what I'll say is that it needs to start where your deficiencies are. And so for most people, I think protein is the thing that they should be considering.
So you're saying a protein supplement?
Yep. Because for most of us,
whey, vegan,
doesn't matter. Does not matter to me. I prefer plant-based protein. Okay. Assuming that you consume an animal-based diet already. Right. If there's already meat in your diet, I think your protein being plant-based is a great idea. The reason why is because plant protein is less inflammatory to the gut than animal protein. It's easier to digest and requires less effort than meat.
How come I hear the opposite of that? Remember when I talked about contradicting point of views?
About like Gundry?
It's about, in general, there are experts that are like, I can show the research on how a carnivore diet has far less impact on your gut. And then you hear them say that a vegan or vegetarian based diet has a greater impact on your gut.
Because there's extremes at play. And the extremes being the people who respond very well to the carnivore diet usually have some type of condition, some type of autoimmune condition that they're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
And if you have that, if you truly have that, which again is like, we're talking about fractions of the population, like very small percentages, less than 5% of the population, maybe even less than 1%, truly having these issues, then that may be something where these plant sources, especially in their whole form, the fiber, the husks, the things that plants may contain, are going to irritate your body and you can't deal with them. But that's not the case for most of us. For most of us, fiber is essential for regulating our appetite, our cholesterol, our brain health, and everything therein. So that's one extreme.
So protein.
Well, I'm talking about the two sides here, where you're like you have like
who's
people,
right.
That if that's you, then the carnivore may be something that you need to consider.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, you have people who are like Paul Saladino, who's like a well-known person who's like his handle was Carnivore MD. He's walked it back now. He's like, hey, I've been doing this, and I actually had like a lot of respect for that. I've been doing this for like a number of years now. I know this is how you guys all know me, but actually I don't think it's the best anymore.
Right.
I actually think that we need to incorporate some plant nutrients, some fruit and other things into our diet. So I think in a long enough time horizon, people who continue to put that forward, I believe they're lying. I believe that they're going to experience some detriments, and they're going to have to either continue on with that lie or come forward and say, you know what, maybe this is the best base of the diet, but I'm incorporating some plant nutrients as
Sure.
well.
Okay, so protein, simple.
Yeah.
Pick your brands, or I should say your types.
Yep.
Blend it up a little bit.
Yep.
Is there anything else that, you know,
But I want to actually,
take?
just to wrap on the protein source and
Yeah.
why I think the plant protein is a little bit better. I think we can all understand, just visualize with me for a second, putting meat in your body, like actual formed animal tissue that has been cooked or not cooked or whatever, depending on if you like eat raw fish or something like that.
Yeah.
It's been cooked or not, but it's animal protein. It's meat like on our body, and you're eating it, and you're going to chew it up and swallow it. Digesting that versus like spinach and rice and things like that, I think we can all visualize that digests a little bit easier and faster. Meat takes longer to digest. This is not an opinion. That's a fact.
Sure.
It takes longer to digest. Why does it take longer to digest? It's because it's harder to digest.
More fibrous.
No, it's not more fibrous. It has no fiber in it.
Really?
But it by fibrous you mean muscle fibers,
muscle
perhaps.
fiber.
Yeah, but not fiber in the regular sense. Long story short is it takes more work to digest it. And that's actually a good thing for some reasons. It keeps you full for longer and etc. But it does require more work metabolically and digestively. So it will cause some level of inflammation and if not irritation, just work. It's work for your body to digest.
Right.
And so if you already consume meat, and that's some portion of your protein, getting some from plant sources is a good idea. It's a well-rounded approach to nutrition. Yeah. One I think is most sustainable.
So would you say that along with that, and having a healthy mix, like you mentioned, would you say like omega-3s? You say D3, K2?
So this is where again it gets into the individual. I think most people will benefit from taking an omega-3 fish oil or fatty acid supplement. And the reason is because they're not encountering enough of it in their diet. I don't want people to consume things for no reason and just buy them, and take them.
Do we get enough of in our diet? It's so hard to get enough of anything.
Most people have no problem getting calories, right? And as a result, they get enough carbs and fat.
But a calorie is not a nutritional.
It's not a micronutrient.
It's not a micronutrient.
Yeah, it's a macronutrient. It's made of macronutrients,
energy,
which depending on how well you eat will contain or not contain the other things. So, but what's going to move the needle for people? I think the protein is going to move the needle. I do believe the omega-3 is going to move the needle. Very cost effectively, vitamin D will move the needle for most people.
Right.
That's why if you see our food being fortified with something, it's probably an important thing.
Okay.
And vitamin D being added to the milk is a good reason to understand that. Yeah, a lot of people agree, even in the big industry level, agree that like big food, like the big manufacturing organizations, they agree that vitamin D is something we can benefit from.
Okay.
Calcium we can benefit from, but D3 is a great supplement for most people. It's so cost effective that it's easy for me to recommend it. The protein, the omega-3s, and honestly, from there, it's like, okay, what do you take next? I think something that is making its way slowly into the consciousness of the mainstream and that will become one of those things over time is creatine. I think creatine will be something that everyone takes and is recommended to take.
It's already started.
Yeah.
They're recommending it. I mean, basically for anything.
Yeah.
It's like healthier for your brain. I heard preventative from like memory loss, Alzheimer's type symptoms.
Bone density.
Yeah.
Both of my parents have been taking creatine for the last 10, 15 years. And that's been a pretty cool thing that they both have great bone density and both have excellent cognitive function.
Nice.
That's been one thing that I've been very successful with getting them to take consistently.
And it's easy.
It's easy to take. Relatively flavorless.
Yeah.
Yep. That's something that I believe in heavily. So then from there, it's like, okay, what is your priority? Right? Because like we said, we can't just recommend an endless list of things. So we need to leave room for the individualization that will come from your goals and where you are in your life.
Can I tell you my routine?
Sure.
And like because I'm like, look, obviously I'm not an expert, but I definitely do my best to like share what I'm doing with people, whether it be online or just in relationships. So in the morning right now, I've narrowed it down to a couple of natural supplements that help to boost my testosterone production without doing TRT.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped doing TRT because I wanted to get back to my baseline of being disciplined with my health, right? Before I start adding things in. Like I want to be, okay, here's what I know to do. Here's what I can do just on my own. So I went instead into the natural supplementation for like hormone boosting type stuff, okay? No peptides yet, nothing like that. Just stuff like some of the stuff that you do, right? You produce. And then I also I don't take a multivitamin anymore. Remember when I was taking a multivitamin You have a really good one on the market. I was taking that for a while.
We actually discontinued it.
Huh?
We discontinued
You
it.
discontinued it?
Mhm.
So I stopped taking multivitamin. And what
And
else?
that's because my opinion is that most people don't benefit the most from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. See, that's another like
Yeah.
high integrity decision.
Yeah.
Where people sell multivitamins usually as a profit mechanism.
Yeah.
But let's not detour. So I take some of that stuff. I can put some of that stuff online later. Sean and his crew have some great quality products too. It just depends on what you want to do. No pressure in any area. And then I will take in the morning a D3K2, right? And I will also have matcha green tea. Sometimes in the matcha green tea, I'll have shilajit mixed into it. Or I'll do some type of detoxifying agent like glutathione, or immune boosting stuff. And that's about it in the morning. That's really all I take. If I'm eating, I will include an omega-3, and then I'll wait. There are some things that I may do during the daytime. At night before I sleep, I've simplified it other than, incidental things that I'll take based on different situations. Zinc and magnesium at night.
Mhm.
I will take another dose of omega-3 sometimes. And I will supplement sometimes with some, not vitamin C at night, but like vitamin E, vitamin A, things like that. I narrow it down to those, and then other things that I plug in for specific purposes. Is that good?
Yeah.
Those 3 to 4 are.
That's great. You didn't mention creatine.
I do creatine now. I used to do it just when I worked out,
Mhm.
but now with all the new research, I'm actually taking it sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think taking it daily is important. Pretty much any of these supplements, they should be taken daily. The beautiful thing about it is, and why there are so many different supplements, is a bit like why there's so many different types of food, like and different food options.
Right.
Because supplements are food essentially. We need to understand that they are food that we're not able to get in our normal diet.
Right.
They're classified under the food. They're regulated under the food area. That's why they're not considered drugs, because they're meant to be things that occur in the food supply and in nature, not things that have to be produced in a laboratory.
Right.
So although there may be versions of supplements that are synthesized in a lab, they're meant to be things that you would encounter in nature and could encounter in nature. And if they're not, that's when they start to be borderline drugs.
Got it.
So there's a lot of things that make a difference for a lot of people. And if we understand that each individual is a little bit different and their lifestyle is a little bit different, we can see why someone would say, no, I started taking magnesium threonate and it changed my life. Like that's the form of magnesium that gets across the blood-brain barrier a little bit more effectively. That may be the one that you take at night. And it's known to boost cognitive function and memory and brain recovery.
So I took that for a little while too. And I don't know if I was looking for like a jolt and an increase in my focus or whatnot,
Right.
but is it more of a long-term thing?
It is and isn't. But what I'm saying is, if like let's just say, for example, that magnesium in your brain was not your deficiency. It doesn't matter how good that ingredient is. That wasn't your deficiency.
Got it.
So it would not move the needle very much for you.
Got it.
Whereas for the next guy or girl, it might be exactly what they needed. And now all of a sudden, they're able to conduct these brain-oriented processes more effectively because they have more magnesium available. They're going to be like, no, Joe, it changed my life.
Wow.
You don't understand.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to consider the individuality of these things. I think the protein and the omega and the D and K2, if you will, because they usually come together now.
Right. Yeah.
Those are 3 easy things that most everyone can benefit from.
Right.
And there's not really a downside to taking, especially because I would leave out the D3 and K2, except it's so cheap. It's usually very cost effective.
So it is needed. It isn't needed.
It's something where you may or may not benefit from it. People who spend a little bit more time out in the sun and make vitamin D in their body correctly may not need to supplement.
So that's the determining factor on that.
For most
It's
people.
like if you're usually office job, car, home, kids, life, whatever, then you should take D3 kids. I just feel like, look around, dude, like right now in offices that I go to, companies that I'm talking to, friendship circles, it's like totally off season and people are just randomly getting sick with different things.
Yeah.
And, I'm not the dude who's going to be like, oh, it's, the vid or it's the flu or I'm like, listen, it's probably that you're not proactive about keeping your immune system strong.
Right.
And you also are too clean. Like you're sanitizing all the time and like your body is not used to fighting.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that going on. That's why I include little things like D3, K2, a little bit zinc at night to help with like immune functionality
Yeah.
while I'm sleeping, yada yada.
Yep.
And that's kind of the thing that everything else supplement. And the reason I mentioned that during this show is because those 4 or 5 items you can clock in at like under $120 a month.
Definitely.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I want to just jump to your brand.
You'd be able to include creatine in there too and still be in there.
Yeah.
Because it's so cost
Creatine
effective.
is not that expensive.
No. Yeah.
You know, I know mine, the container that I get is probably around, I want to say $35, but it'll last me like 2 months.
Yeah, that's exactly where ours is at. It's right at, yeah, it's $30 and it lasts 2 months.
Right.
Yeah, so it's exactly that.
You see, people look at it as an add-on expense, but I look at it as what do you need to stop spending on and replace that with?
Yeah.
You know, type of thing. All right, let's talk about quality. I know for myself and a lot of the people that are going to be hopefully using and utilizing this show to like get up and up on a few things, I want to raise the bar a little bit on quality of supplements. One of the reasons that I included HPN, your brand, with other brands that I use is because of how blunt you guys were about what's in the product and where it comes from, as opposed to just advertising the impact or the shiny part of the supplement.
Yeah.
All right. So when it comes to quality, is there really a huge concern that we need to be worried about? Like, are we putting like, am I spending, if I spend $25, for example, on a supplement, and there's another supplement that's that same thing, but it's $40 and it's claiming to have a higher quality of content, does it make sense? Am I putting crap in my body at $20? And do I need to make the improvement and absorb the price adjustment?
It's you know, it's a little bit like cars, right? Where you get what you pay for to an extent, and then beyond that, you're paying for innovations that may not be daily felt, but they're there, and they're not that they're not worthwhile, but they may not be as impactful to your health as that budgetary, you know, allowance would allow for.
Right.
So like the difference between a uh, supermarket supplement and one that is like from a higher end company that like that puts a lot into what they call quality is probably substantial. But the difference between that company who puts a lot into it and then the company who's like advertising as like ultra premium and charging seemingly ridiculous prices in comparison to the market, that's probably not worth it. But there is a gap. The gap occurs in pretty much 2 main levels. Number one is the input, meaning what source of the ingredient they used. There are A, B, C, D, E, and F grades of every ingredient. And that comes from where they're made and how they're tested at the ingredient level, how they're stored even, how old the ingredient is.
So what do I do?
Yeah. So
What do we do?
when you go for that next level up where you're trying to buy from a brand versus like just what's at the store, and you like get to know the brand and like if quality seems to be something that's important to them, if it's not like ridiculously out of line with the cost of the more generic version, I would go for it. And that's because you're going to hope to get more out of it. And when we talk about the quality of the input, okay, that's hard to see as a consumer.
Yeah.
You can't know actually.
Sometimes I feel like, you know, like
you can't know.
This one thing is like $90.
Yeah. And that's so the one thing being $90 is usually never going to be substantiated in value.
Okay.
So that's almost always the case. There's really no single supplement that would cost that much. That, in my opinion, is worth
liposomal, all natural, from the mountains, from the caves.
Yeah, these things tend to be more about trying to
like,
create
things like
differentiation.
Shilajit and like liposomal delivery. Those things now I'm seeing are like 70, 75, 80, $85.
Yeah, and most of it is hype. And not that it's not going to be having any difference in effect. There's some ingredients where it actually helps a lot because the blood absorption is so poor. I'll give an example since you brought it up. Turmeric is one. Turmeric is one where having it in a liposomal format makes sense because taking turmeric as a supplement for gut health, brain health, joint health, the impact of the turmeric is going to be limited to how much of it gets into your bloodstream. And it happens to be that it doesn't absorb that well. And so putting it in a liposomal format has been proven to increase the uptake of the turmeric, the curcuminoids in the turmeric by like 4 to 5 times. as compared to not
So
having
it's an
any.
example of one where it makes sense to splurge a
Yeah.
little bit.
But if you want to take turmeric and you want to actually give it the best chance to work, throwing more and more turmeric of an inferior non-liposomal format
Yeah.
isn't the answer. Taking the liposomal format turmeric is the answer.
What about liposomal when it comes to like vitamin C, when it comes to B12, stuff like that?
I don't think we have any issue absorbing those things.
Really?
Yeah, we absorb them quite well. And so I don't think that that's going to be something where it's worth spending the money. And I think that you can take this ingredient by ingredient. And I think the important thing to do as a consumer, if you want to see what's worth the investment and what's not, what research do they have to show absorption data in the body, in humans, of non-liposomal versus liposomal for this ingredient? Or are they just friggin' throwing liposomes in there and saying this is better? I need to charge you 2 times more.
Right.
Like that's the question here.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll have to get into that.
Yeah,
sometime,
it's a whole separate
offline.
So, but what I was going to get to is like the quality of the ingredients is going to be unknown at the consumer level because on the label they'll appear the same. So that's the tough part. But what won't be unknown to the consumer is the testing that is performed on the product after it's produced.
Is there anything in supplements, like label wise, that you want to stay away from?
You
Fillers.
probably don't want to consume products that weren't made in the U.S. For a couple of reasons. As long as ingredients come from all over the world, but you would prefer for it to be produced here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Most likely, because at least we have an understanding of our manufacturing practices. And I'm not saying other countries have bad manufacturing practices, but some of them have none at all. And that's tough when it's going to be a consumable. When it's a T-shirt or shoes or something like that, at least it's on your body. It's not going in your body.
Right.
So I think we have a pretty good standard of manufacturing here in the US. But testing, no matter where it comes from in the world, post-production testing should be done on all products. And I'm really proud that since roughly within the first year of starting business, since like 2011, 2012, every single batch of every single HPN product in any brand that I operate and formulate for has been independently tested.
That's right.
And that independent testing means that after production, we have done everything that we think we can do to make the best product. We test the ingredients before we make it. We test after production. We do our own quality control measures in-house. But then we allow a third-party agency, who I think is the best in the world. They're called the BSCG. This is founded by a guy named Don Catlin, who is like the pioneer of Olympic drug testing. That's whose work ended up catching Lance Armstrong and most of the other people who have ever been caught.
Oh, really?
He's the one who figured out how to test appropriately. And it's a cat and mouse game in professional athletics because these guys are trying to perform at an elite level and getting paid to do so. So they're going to keep innovating. But that was kind of his life's mission, was to try and clean up sports. And so, it's a separate matter whether we should be even cleaning up sports. But if we're doing it, if we're saying it's the rules, then I understand you want to enforce the rules. There's a whole other school of thought that we should just let these guys do whatever.
They do testing for those types of things.
They develop the actual test that is done by all the different labs around the world. And so that was his life's mission. And so he created the BSCG to help be able to provide testing services so that companies like us who want to believe that we're doing the very best can prove it. And so they test for the label claim, they test for heavy metals, they test for even bacterial stuff, and contaminants of adulteration from pharmaceuticals.
And people who don't, are we risking having a lot of these problems with those supplements?
You are risking it, yes. And so I think that if they don't invest into quality, that's quality to me.
Yeah.
Quality to me is something that you can prove. And it's not always going to be an investment that yields more ROI. And usually it doesn't.
Right.
The more you put into quality, usually the less ROI you're going to get. But that's okay because you're now making investment into your brand and consumers coming back. Exactly. So
people stay.
It's very important. And so if you don't see, the long story short, what a consumer could see, if you don't see evidence of an established and ongoing at all times quality control program, stay away from that brand.
Got it.
They don't care about their products. They're not demonstrating that they do.
If they don't care about the product, they probably don't care about you.
Yeah, if you can say that, if you can say, oh, I care a lot about my consumers, but you don't do anything to validate that your products are safe and legitimate to the label claim.
Right.
The fact is, most brands don't source their own ingredients, which we do. We provide all of our raw ingredients. They don't understand anything about manufacturing. They've never been to the place where their products are made. I'm there regularly, on a weekly basis.
It's truly just a business.
Yeah, it's a business. They see a trend, turmeric, okay, turmeric is a thing that's hot right now. I'm a great marketer. I know how to get attention, interest, demand, and get people to take action.
Yeah.
I understand these marketing principles. I know how to get traffic. And so they order it from someplace, whether it's in the US
Yeah.
or not. It never even goes to them. They
There's
never
a
even
lot
see
of
it.
white label supplement companies, right?
Yes, they order.
Right.
So either that's even the lower version of it. The higher version is where they got some money and they have like a bankroll and they can order something custom, but they never even see the product. The product goes straight from wherever it's made in the world. Usually it's going to be overseas because
Yeah.
it's cheaper, straight to a fulfillment house. They don't have any touch with the product. They don't have any like pride in the product. It's all about the marketing. Their pride is in the marketing, and they are excellent marketers, but they don't have any passion for this. I have a passion for this. And so every part of it matters.
You
And
know,
so
one of the
you should
things
be
that
looking
stood
for that.
out, now that you mentioned that, you know, you founded, like you said, High Performance Nutrition about 14 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Your company grew, and I never saw a lot of advertising for it. Not like abundantly.
Right.
And that was always interesting to me.
Yeah.
It was another indicator where I was like, that's probably true of a lot of high quality brands that we see.
Yeah.
Because and I'm not saying it's, you know, just enthusiasts like me or people where it's like an enjoyable life hobby to like study and know and take this stuff. But I noticed that the company grew massively just over the past, would you say like 5 to 6 years, 5 to 7 years?
We really took off by introducing a very cutting edge supplement. That's where we focus a lot, like is with these supplements that I think are game changers for people that are not part of the food supply, that are still comprised of natural ingredients, but like you're not going to encounter them in your diet most likely, and they have like a significant impact.
What are some of those?
The biggest one of all,
P6 or PA or whatever.
PA7 is if you're interested in aggressive strength training, which you know is not going to be for everyone.
Right.
But for everyone, the one product that I would highlight that I would say is very special and very worth everyone who's listening to this podcast to check out, it's called NAD3.
Okay.
And it represents supplementation in a category that is relatively new and unknown to a lot of people, but it is catching on very, very rapidly. And in 2013, no one had heard of it. But I took a big gamble, and that gamble has gotten me to where we are today, actually, because it was the stimulus for all of this. And that was to commercialize an ingredient called nicotinamide riboside, which had evidence that it could boost NAD levels. And people didn't even know what NAD was at the time. Most people didn't. People would remember the mitochondria from high school, maybe from biology class.
Yeah.
But the NAD compound is something that we were able to connect as being essential to life and essential to the mitochondria producing energy efficiently and effectively over time. And as the levels of NAD in our body went down, our mitochondria stopped functioning as efficiently. And then we start making energy in a very inefficient manner, but also making more free radicals and damaging our DNA, causing poor DNA replication and eventually leading to dysfunctional cells. And this is aging in a nutshell. So it's like, wow, this is a big deal. We should come out with something like that can impact this. And this nicotinamide riboside was seen to be effective for that. So we made a huge gamble, and we were, out of all these massive companies who knew about this information, none of them really wanted to do this because it wasn't hot, it wasn't new, it wasn't exciting. Like in terms of like being a stimulant or fat loss or muscle growth, it was like anti-aging. And so we took a big bet, and that became one of the fastest selling supplements in the world.
So it's my understanding that that's a precursor to NMN.
No, NMN is a precursor.
NMN is a precursor.
NMN is a precursor to NAD.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it works. You take NMN.
Both.
Yeah, you take NMN for it to convert into NAD. The idea behind taking NMN is that it is better absorbed by the body in terms of its ability to convert into NAD. But in human research, this has not panned out. This hasn't panned out yet to have any actual discernible outcome. Both NR and NMN have shown to increase NAD levels in humans. That's true, and in animals.
Okay.
But what hasn't been shown yet is any meaningful human health outcome, cholesterol, cognitive function, endurance, anything that you can think of. Nothing has been improved by taking these supplements.
So how do we know it's helping us?
Well, here's the thing. That's why in 2018, I had been reinvesting. A big thing to me is reinvesting. Like we put money back into the science and into doing new research and looking for new versions of things. And so even though we were killing it, like we were making it as fast as we could sell it, this NR product, which we came out with in 2013. I own the trademark in the United States for NAD booster. I own it because I was the first person to make one.
Nice.
And I filed it before anyone else was even thinking about it. Now, of course, you have celebrities everywhere taking NAD supplements or IVs or et cetera,
Sure.
because it's very hot now. And we now know that it can have a big impact. But like I said, there was this big problem of like having an actual outcome. So we kept investing into testing new compounds and see what else is out there that can do this. And that's what led us to NAD3, which is the product that we now introduced in 2019 and continue to put forward. It's not only shown to increase NAD levels, but also to increase sirtuin activation, which is the compound that is most closely associated to protecting our DNA. When people talk about intermittent fasting, the reason why that works is because the longer you haven't eaten, the more active this sirtuin protein group is.
Yeah.
So activating sirtuins, reducing inflammation in the cells, measured through markers that we can like detect,
Right.
as well as that big NAD puzzle piece. But most importantly is when given to humans with placebo control for 8 weeks, we're measuring decreases in cholesterol and triglycerides with no dietary intervention. So it's actually making the body healthy beyond the blood,
Okay.
beyond just NAD
And you can
alone.
test all these things now. It's not like it's just
We have
hypothetical. You guys aren't going to
yeah.
tell me when I'm 80 years old, oh, hey, it worked.
Yeah, no,
You know?
we actually have multiple published studies, and the latest one showed that it can even increase stem cell production. So this is a big deal, and I think NAD3 is the advancement of the category and something that everyone should consider. If you're looking for that other supplement that's not foundational, like we
Right,
talked about with
right.
protein, fish oil, vitamin D, creatine, something that's a little bit more exotic, if you will, or newer, but can have a big impact,
Yeah.
I recommend NAD3.
Okay, I want to ask you something else before we wrap up. I know you got to go in a bit, but you've been growing your company for 14 years, and you also now have a family. Okay, you got your little one about a year and a half old now,
15 months.
or so.
Yeah.
You mentioned something to me in the gym the other day, where it kind of came across as like, I don't even fucking care about my business anymore. Like I'm all about the family
Yeah.
now. So it's like, and I know we were kind of joking in a way, but you kind of meant it in a way.
Yeah.
Like what did you mean by that?
It's a super reality check to see how fast she's advancing
Yeah.
and how fast she's growing and how much my effort manifests itself like in an hourly basis. Whereas like in the business, you work and work and work, but like you don't necessarily get hourly benefit and like return on your investment.
Yeah.
It's like a long time horizon. The time horizon with my daughter is very short. So like the ability to make an impact is so immediate and the need for it is so immediate
Yeah.
that it commands attention and it deserves attention. And so it's like, I want to prioritize that. The weekend is when I get to do it the most, right?
Yeah.
Which is why like time like this is so valuable.
When you text me, you said, hey, so I work 12 hours a day during the week, and on the weekends it's family time.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, well, can you come over Saturday morning?
Yeah.
You know?
So that's it. So it's like I was with her like right before this, and I'm going to go right back afterwards.
Right.
And so it's like that time is just everything. And yeah, I still got to do what I got to do. I'm still killing it in work, and I'm not
Okay.
going to stop. But I'm making the time
Yeah.
so that I can do that too.
Right.
You know, and that might involve a few less trips to LA.
Of course.
less times like doing like what would have been fun stuff before. But it's not a sacrifice.
It's kind of cool to see that side of you now.
Yeah, it's so enjoyable
because you've been hustler mode for like well over a decade.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden your energy shifted and you're like, yes, that's fine. You know, I've worked up my blessings in that area.
Yeah.
But now I've got this family life. And I want to pick your brain a little bit, but I don't want the PhD answer
Right.
on this because I know you get like super detailed. For people who are like, you know, my family, some of our close friends, people in our friendship networks, or like I'm from the Midwest. And, you know, the majority of the people that we want to reach out to don't live and shop at bougie fucking places every day.
Right.
So, and you're raising a child. You know, I posted something the other day about how Ty Lopez was kind of narking on Coca-Cola for like pushing it out to parents. And even now, like when I visit friends and whatnot, I'll see them, you know, like, okay, yeah, you can have a Sprite, but just one. And I'm kind of like, yo, like, that's like 4 things I've seen this kid consume just while I've been at her, you know, around or by watching friends. How disciplined does a parent really need to be? And should it be that super freaking alarming for them to watch what their kids are consuming, particularly between the ages of, let's say, birth and like 13 years old, I want to say. Maybe that's about right.
Mhm.
The ADHD problems, the dependency on drugs that these kids don't need, the depression problems that we're seeing now, lack of stimulant, overstimulant, right, and so forth. Like, how would you play that out as, let's just say, a reasonable father?
I think overseeing and to some extent controlling the food and other things that your kids consume is as big of a responsibility as a parent as any. It's as important as anything else that you're going to do for your
And we're
kids.
not saying like don't have an ice cream cone on Sundays together. We're not
No,
saying like
I'm just saying
don't enjoy
it's your
yourself.
responsibility to make sure the aggregate of everything is right. For us as a family right now, that means that we're not giving our daughter any added sugar, like any processed sugar. She has fruit all day. She has things that are delicious all the time, that homemade meals and
Right,
whatever.
right.
But we're not giving her any added sugar.
I have some friends that were super disciplined. Actually, you know some of them that were super disciplined with their kids growing up on some of these topics. And it's very, maybe it'll change in their adulthood. Like, dude, I didn't pick up most of my bad habits until like mid to upper 30s,
Mhm.
right? Like super disciplined before that. But they don't crave soda. They don't crave like a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
They don't like crave candy, unless just something that they might go shop for together or stop by a store for fun.
Let me ask you this: are you like your parents at all?
Um, yes,
Not in all the ways. In some of the ways.
I would say, yeah, in some of the ways.
Like what comes to mind? Is there anything that you think
If
that
you're
you
going to talk
inherited?
about like diet,
No, not diet. Like the way you think and the way that you act and the way that you are.
yeah, I would say, yeah, there's definitely,
We were talking at the beginning about like, oh, I'm genetically predisposed to this and that, and I said that the number one thing you inherit is culture and behaviors, and I think that's the case here. If you live in a household that prioritizes health and wellness and makes it part of life, not a stress of life and a chore of life, just part of it,
right.
I think your kids are going to inherit that.
Okay.
If you're a hard worker, if you have a loving relationship with your significant other, if you have a great relationship with them, if you're understanding, empathetic, but also set boundaries, I think they will learn that that's the way to be. Like they
Got
will inherit behavior as much as they inherit any of the genes that you passed on.
Got it. So I love all this stuff, bro. I feel like we could have gone like 4 hours. We should probably cut it soon. But one of the visions for the show is, and I'm guilty of this too, is like so much misinformation for like young professionals, young adults. And I say, oh, it's easier for you guys. When I was that age, I didn't have access to all these YouTube videos and constant flow of experts like flooding my brain with all this information. But now there's like too much information, a lot of negativity, a lot of things that like could steer people away from like a healthy faith, in God or their nutrition or their mindset or their music. And although I want everybody to enjoy this and hopefully we'll all have fun, with whatever I'm building right now. But particularly the young professional ages of, let's say, like 15 to like 25, I feel like can very easily be misled, can very easily be influenced, can very easily be manipulated. And so, what would be your advice? And even if you wanted to go back to the younger version of yourself, what would be your advice, not on a nutritional standpoint of view, but on just a life, professional, quality of life point of view for somebody in that age group, especially if they're business minded or oriented?
I think the only focus should be learning and mastery in the area that you're interested. And if that's like a formal education matter, great. If it's not, that's great too. But you should be obsessive about learning and mastering the core skill at hand and everything that's immediately related to it. And that can come from a number of different people. I've been fortunate to be exposed to many different, like, successful individuals in different ways. And I was able to take something from all of them and build it into myself. And that's the fabric that I'm made of, is all these different strands. And so it's not any one person, it's a combination of these different people and experiences. So you have to be focused on getting that knowledge. If you're 15 to 25, you need that experience, that information, that knowledge. You have to get it from somewhere. Like you said, oh, I've learned so many things from you and me from you over time. We've had to do that. Like you have to do that. And so that should be the entire focus. I think people, because there's pressure now, there's pressure to accumulate money and things very quickly, they want to put that before the fact that you have to be worthy of that. Like they want to just get it without actually being worthy of it. They're like, how can I get the outcome the fastest? And I think that's short-sighted. I think the thing that's more valuable than the money or the things is the understanding of how you could get it and the knowledge in your core area. So if you can be obsessive about that for 10 years, I think then you set yourself up for the rest of your life to have a money printing machine inside of you. If you can do that.
I'm going to ask you a quick impact. This is one of my favorite questions. And it's kind of like we jump in a time machine, we go back in time, and we find the 18-year-old version of you. You only have 20 seconds to talk to yourself, the younger version of you. What would you tell them?
I tell them, you got this. You just keep going. Like, don't, like you are on a path that you're supposed to be on, and you just keep going. Like, don't stop.
Keep going.
Yeah, that's the only thing that has separated me from anyone else that I know is that I just didn't stop.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Listen, guys, if you want to check out some of Sean's material, there's so much online. We'll link it up below. If you want to check out some of the supplements at High Performance Nutrition, I like to blend it in with other things that I'm taking, not just one particular brand, but it is great quality. And some of the things that we talked about are included there. And if you want to reach out to us as a team, an organization, you have topics that you think we should be talking about or bringing up, or it's not real enough, or it's still too fluffy, drop it in the comments. Be bold. Like, tell us what the hell you want to hear. One of the things that I've told a lot of our guests is I don't want some fluffy, like just highlight the person that's on your show and make them look good like some amazing expert. I want to have a little bit more hard conversations, like stuff behind the scenes, and so forth. So I wanted the conversation to be kind of like the comment section, like the things that people will talk about in the comment section. I wanted to be in on the show. I think we've covered a lot of that today. But if there's anything else having to do with these topics or others, guys, please light us up below. I know it's a young show. We're just launching. In fact, if you're watching this episode, it's probably only episode 12 or 13 if you're watching it. But I appreciate your trust. Help us to grow this. You understand the vision. I thank you very much for jumping on. I know you got a lot going on right now, Sean, but it's a pleasure always.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for contributing. Thanks for your knowledge. Thank you for being a good example, as a young man, a professional, father and husband. And I look forward to doing this again soon.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. We'll see you guys later.